Hello and welcome back. So we had been discussing the hard problem of consciousness, a term that was coined by David Chalmers. And in these lecture series today we will discuss how the Chalmers concept of the hard problem of consciousness have had its impact, leading to new terminologies such as the mysterious flame of consciousness. So today's topic is an extension of the hard problem of consciousness of David Chalmers. Now, David Chalmers, as we understand, is one of the most prominent philosophers on consciousness, famous for formulating the hard problem of consciousness. He argues that physical explanations like those Dennett defends are insufficient to explain qualia, which he sees as irreducible. While Jackson's thought experiment focuses on knowledge acquisition, Chalmers extends the debate to the metaphysical problem of explaining why and how physical processes give rise to subjective experience. In his work, Chalmers posits that phenomenal consciousness, that is, the subjective experience, resists reduction to purely physical explanations, making his approach an important counterpart to Dennett's eliminative materialism. There is also few philosophers like Susan Hurley. Hurley's work on embodied cognition argues against the idea that cognition and consciousness can be understood in isolation from bodily interactions with the world. This perspective diverges from both Jackson's and Dennett's approaches by emphasizing the role of the environment and body in generating conscious experience, not merely abstract brain states of knowledge of facts. So right now we are discussing the key contemporary thinkers who have gone beyond Dennett and Jackson, starting with David Chalmers, there is Susan Hurley, and there is also Thomas Metzinger. Thomas Metzinger, known for his work on the self-model theory of subjectivity, suggests that consciousness is an internal model constructed by the brain that serves to represent the body and the world. In this way, the subjective experience of color that Mary might gain upon leaving the room is part of this model and may still be explainable in physicalist terms, though in a more complex and layered model than traditional reductionism allows. Finally, we will now be discussing the shift from Frank Jackson's viewpoint. Interestingly, Jackson himself later revised his stance, moving away from dualism and towards physicalism, arguing that his original thought experiment misrepresented the nature of knowledge. He now believes that Mary's newfound experience of red could eventually be explained as part of her learning how to apply her previous physical knowledge in a new mode of perception rather than gaining new non-physical knowledge. And this is significant, for Frank Jackson gets converted to a physicalist model. John Searle critiques both Dennett's eliminative materialism and Jackson's knowledge argument from the perspective of his biological naturalism. He maintains that consciousness is both caused by brain processes and yet irreducible to them. In Searle's view, consciousness has a first-person ontology that cannot be dismissed, making him an important voice in discussions about whether physicalism can fully explain subjective experience. Now, we will also try to see the recent literature survey on Mary, Robo-Mary and Qualia. The paper entitled Robo-Mary, Black Banana Tricks and the Metaphysics of Consciousness, which was written by John M. DePaul in 2013, is a significant move in this manner. This paper critiques Dennett's Robo-Mary thought experiment, focusing on conceptual flaws and providing empirical arguments that challenge Dennett's physicalist conclusions. DePaul argues that certain empirical phenomena like blind sight provide a counterexample to Dennett's claim that physicalism can account for all aspects of consciousness. The knowledge argument and the phenomenology of human mind in 2020, we will see Jackson's thought process. So this particular paper re-examines Jackson's thought experiment in light of new findings from neuroscience and phenomenology. The authors argue that the recent empirical research supports a more nuanced view of how the brain processes subjective experiences, potentially reconciling some aspects of the knowledge argument with physicalism. This literature emphasizes the complexity of neural correlates and cognitive processes involved in conscious perception. Chalmers continue to explore why physical processes give rise to qualia, emphasizing that the first-person experience, qualia, cannot be deduced from objective facts. His works on philosophical zombies, that are entities physically identical to humans but lacking consciousness, provide another way of challenging Dennett's physicalism by questioning whether consciousness is inevitable from a purely physical standpoint. Metzinger's The Ego Tunnel 2009 and The Transparent Self work contributes to the debate by arguing that what we think of as a self or subjective experience is a model generated by the brain. His view aligns somewhat with Dennett's in that both see the self and qualia as constructed rather than fundamental. However, Metzinger offers a more detailed neuroscience-based explanation of how this construction occurs. Anil Seth's predictive processing theory. Seth offers a predictive processing model of consciousness where the brain continuously generates and updates predictions about sensory input. He argues that experiences like seeing red are predictions based on physical processes, further supporting a physicalist framework. His work has garnered attention for explaining how consciousness emerges from neural processes without invoking non-physical entities. Now we will discuss certain points of convergence and divergence. The points of convergence: many modern thinkers, including Metzinger and Seth, explore how conscious experiences arise from the interaction between brain states and the environment. These views show convergence in their belief that consciousness can be understood through complex physical systems, though they may differ on the exact mechanisms. Divergence. While Dennett and thinkers like Metzinger view consciousness as entirely explainable through physical processes, others like Chalmers argue that the qualitative nature of experiences, what it feels like, cannot be reduced to neural correlates alone. These keeps the debate open between reductionist physicalism and those proposing some kind of irreducible aspect of consciousness. The debate on qualia, physicalism, and the Merry thought experiment remains vibrant, with a mix of supporters and critiques of Dennett's views. Philosophers like Chalmers, Metzinger, and Searle contribute significantly to evolving discussions about whether consciousness can be fully explained by physical processes. While Dennett's Robomary aims to discuss qualia as an illusion, recent literature continues to explore whether subjective experience can be fully captured by science, or if there is something about consciousness that still escapes physicalist reduction. Now we will be discussing more on the hard problem of consciousness, for we are set to discuss the mysterious flame of consciousness. In Colin McGinn's work, The Mysterious Flame, Conscious Minds in a Material World, 1999, and David Chalmers' article, Facing Up to the Problem of Consciousness, 1995, both thinkers address the hard problem of consciousness, but they propose different perspectives on how consciousness relates to the physical world. Below, I will summarize the core concepts mentioned in these works and explain the metaphors like mysterious flame and other philosophical ideas central to the debate about consciousness. The Mysterious Flame, Colin McGinn. In The Mysterious Flame, McGinn introduces the metaphor of the mysterious flame to describe consciousness and its elusive nature when it comes to explaining how it arises from the physical brain. According to McGinn, Mysterianism, McGinn argues for a form of cognitive closure, which means that humans are cognitively incapable of fully understanding how consciousness, the flame, arises from material processes in the brain. The mind-body problem is, in his view, an insoluble mystery because human cognitive abilities are limited. He suggests that the relationship between consciousness and brain process is like a flame. Although we can perceive and experience it, we cannot explain the exact mechanism by which subjective experience, qualia, emerges from physical matter. Cognitive limitation. McGinn's Mysterianism suggests that even with the advances in neuroscience and philosophy, humans are likely to remain forever epistemically closed to solving the problem of consciousness. The flame metaphor captures the idea that consciousness is present and vivid, but beyond our grasp for full understanding. In his paper, Facing Up the Problem of Consciousness, published in 1995, David Chalmers distinguishes between two problems of consciousness, the easy problem and the hard problem. Chalmers tackles the hard problem, which is about explaining why and how physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective experiences or qualia. Here are some of the key concepts. Easy problem of consciousness. These are problems about how the brain performs functions like perception, attention, memory, and behavioral control. These problems are considered easy because they can, in principle, be solved by neuroscience and cognitive science. The easy problems involve explaining the mechanisms by which the brain processes information and controls behavior, but they do not involve explaining subjective experience itself. The hard problem of consciousness. Chalmers frames the hard problem as the problem of explaining why and how physical processes in the brain give rise to subjective experience, what it is like to be conscious being. In contrast to the easy problems, the hard problem involves understanding why physical matter has phenomenal properties. Chalmers argues that solving the hard problems requires more than just studying brain function. It requires addressing why subjective experience, example, the experience of the color red or the taste of chocolate, accompanies these functions. Chalmers rejects reductive materialism, the idea that everything about consciousness can be explained by physical processes. He advocates for property dualism, where consciousness of reality that cannot be reduced to physical explanations. In this view, consciousness is a non-reductive phenomena which it is related to the brain. It has properties that cannot be fully explained by physical processes alone. Philosophical zombies. Chalmers uses the thought experiment of a philosophical zombie, a being physically identical to a human but without subjective experience, to argue that physicalism is insufficient. A zombie behaves like a human but lacks qualia. This thought experiment illustrates that subjective experience is something over and above physical brain states. Both McGinn and Chalmers focus on the concept of qualia, which refers to the subjective qualitative aspects of experience. Qualia are central to the hard problem of consciousness because they represent what is missing from purely physical explanations of the mind. The explanatory gap. This gap refers to the idea that even if we have complete knowledge of the brain's physical processes, there remains a gap in explaining why and how these processes give rise to subjective experiences. McGinn believes this gap is unbridgeable due to cognitive limitations, while Chalmers thinks we need a fundamental new theory to address it. Chalmers explores Panpsychism as a possible solution to the heart problem. In this view, consciousness might be a fundamental property of matter like mass or charge. This would mean that some form of consciousness exists in all physical entities, even at the level of atoms, and that human consciousness is a more complex manifestation of these fundamental properties. Now, comparison, McGinn and Chalmers on consciousness and McGinn's Mysterianism. McGinn argues that human beings will never solve the hard problem of consciousness because of cognitive limitations. His metaphor of the mysterious flame emphasizes that consciousness is beyond human comprehension. He proposes that the relationship between the mind and brain is ultimately a mystery we are not equipped to solve, rather than something we can uncover with more research or new theories. Chalmers' approach? Chalmers, on the other hand, argues that we need a new theory of consciousness that recognizes consciousness as a fundamental feature of reality. He believes the heart problem is solvable, but only if we expand our understanding of the physical world to include consciousness as an intrinsic part of it. Chalmers is more optimistic about the possibility of addressing the explanatory gap by developing new concepts and frameworks, whereas McGinn sets this gap as unbridgeable. McGinn's mysterious flame is a metaphor for the unexplainable nature of consciousness, highlighting the limits of human understanding. He believes that consciousness is something we experience but cannot fully explain due to our cognitive limitations. Chalmers' hard problem of consciousness focuses on the need of a non-reductive explanation of subjective experience. He believes that qualia and consciousness are fundamental properties of reality that go beyond what physical science can explain, but he is optimistic that new theories can eventually address this gap. Both philosophers grapple with the mystery of how the subjective mind relates to the physical brain, but McGinn is pessimistic about our ability to solve this problem, while Chalmers seeks new avenues of explanation that go beyond physicalism. The exploration of consciousness and its relationship to the physical brain has been a focal point of debate in the philosophy of mind. The concepts of McGinn's mysterious flame, Chalmers' naturalistic dualism, and views from other prominent philosophers such as Tim Crane, Dennett's functionalism, Searle's biological naturalism, Patricia Churchland's materialism, and theories from John Hale and Jaegwon Kim offer various perspectives on the mind-body problem. Now that the background is set, we are good to elucidate these philosophical views in light of McGinn's and Chalmers' positions on consciousness. McGinn argues that the problem of consciousness is beyond human comprehension due to cognitive limitations. Consciousness is like a mysterious flame. We experience it, but we cannot explain how subjective experience arises from brain activity. Naturalistic dualism, Chalmers. Chalmers disagrees with McGinn's pessimism, while McGinn sees consciousness as an inherently mysterious and unsolvable. Chalmers proposes a naturalistic dualism, which is there from pages 263 to 273 in The Conscious Mind, where consciousness is treated as a fundamental aspect of reality alongside physical properties. Unlike McGinn, Chalmers believes that a non-reductive explanation of consciousness is possible, although it requires expanding our current physical theories. Crane's mechanical mind. In The Mechanical Mind, Tim Crane explores a more functionalist approach, questioning the idea that consciousness is inherently mysterious. He suggests that understanding the mind might involve mechanical or functional models that can eventually bridge the explanatory gap. Unlike McGinn, Crane leaves open the possibility that mechanistic explanations of the brain could encompass consciousness. Searle's biological naturalism. John Searle presents a biological naturalist view. We are right now comparing with the other philosophers vis-a-vis the mysterious flame. Searle thus argues that consciousness is a natural biological phenomenon like digestion or photosynthesis. Searle would criticize McGinn's mysterianism, suggesting that although we do not fully understand consciousness yet, there is no reason to believe it is beyond comprehension. Searle believes that consciousness arises from the biological functioning of the brain, although it has subjective qualities. Patricia Churchland's Materialism. In Matter and Consciousness, Churchland supports a strong materialist view, rejecting McGinn's cognitive closure. Churchland argues that the neuroscience of the brain will eventually explain consciousness, dismissing the need for concepts like mystery or metaphysical dualism. Churchland would view McGinn's stance as overtly pessimistic about scientific progress. Hale's and Kim's philosophy of mind. Both John Hale and Jaegwon Kim engage deeply with the mind-body problem. Kim, in particular, defends a form of physicalism but acknowledges the explanatory gap proposed by consciousness. While he does not accept McGinn's mysterianism, Kim does recognize that physicalist theories struggle with explaining subjective experience. We will further be seeing the key concepts related with the mysterious flame in our next lecture. Thank you.